Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to take you on a journey through the fascinating history of the Fertile Crescent. Today, we'll explore the geography of this remarkable region, often called the Cradle of Civilization and the birth of agriculture. Over the next few slides, we'll look at how this area shaped early human society and set the stage for the development of civilizations. Let's get started. Let's take a closer look at what we call a fertile arc. This is essentially the geographic heart of the ancient world. It refers to a specific region of rich, fertile land in the Middle East that forms a crescent shape, often called the Fertile Crescent. This area was incredibly important because it provided ideal conditions for the growth of early civilizations. Its soil was fertile, and it had plentiful water sources, making it a perfect environment for people to settle, farm, and develop complex societies. Geographically, this fertile arc stretches from the Arab Gulf, moving through Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates Rivers, and extends all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. These river systems were more than just water channels. They were vital lifelines that supported agriculture, trade, and the movement of peoples, helping civilizations flourish and evolve. So, when we think about the origins of civilization, this region's combination of fertile land and reliable water sources made it the ideal birthplace. It's no coincidence that it's often called the Cradle of Civilization. Remember, this area's geographic features played a crucial role in shaping early human development and laying the foundation for the complex societies that followed. Welcome to our next slide, where we explore Mesopotamia, often called the land between the rivers. The name itself is quite descriptive. Mesopotamia is a Greek term that means between the rivers, which is fitting because this region is nestled between two major waterways. Now, speaking of these waterways, the Tigris and Euphrates are the most prominent physical features of the area. They weren't just rivers. They were the lifeblood of Mesopotamian civilization, providing water for agriculture, transportation, and daily life. Let's break down the geographic division of this land. In the north, we have northern Mesopotamia, which is characterized by a plateau. This elevated region is bordered by mountains on the north and east, creating natural boundaries. Meanwhile, in the south, the landscape opens up into a smooth, low-lying plain. This plain is where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flow from the hills, spreading out and creating fertile land ideal for farming. Before we move on, here's a quick question for you. What does Mesopotamia literally mean? Think about the words Meso and Potamia, and how they relate to the land between these great rivers. Let's start by looking at how early humans first settled in Mesopotamia. Over 12,000 years ago, hunter-gatherer groups arrived in this region, drawn by its resources. Now, a crucial factor that made this area so appealing was the annual flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These floods were like nature's way of fertilizing the land. They brought with them silt, which is a mixture of fertile soil and tiny rocks. This silt is incredibly important because it enriches the soil, making it perfect for farming. In fact, the first farm settlements in Mesopotamia appeared as early as 7000 BC, thanks to this natural cycle. So, the annual floods didn't just water the land. They actively created the fertile conditions that allowed early farming communities to thrive. And this, in turn, set the foundation for the development of civilization in the region. Now, can anyone tell me what the name of this fertile soil deposited by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers is? Mastering the waters, the necessity of irrigation. Now, let's explore the paradox that Mesopotamian farmers faced. Despite having fertile soil, the region received very little rainfall. This meant that agriculture depended entirely on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers for water. The challenge was clear. How could they harness the power of these mighty rivers without being overwhelmed or destroyed by them? Now, a major threat came from flooding. Heavy rains in the mountains of eastern Asia Minor caused the rivers to swell dramatically. These floods were devastating. They destroyed crops, killed livestock, and washed away homes and entire settlements. And the truth is, farmers had no control over these destructive forces. On the other hand, when water levels dropped too low, the land dried up and crops failed. Without enough water from the rivers, the land became barren and unusable, putting the survival of entire communities at risk. So, what was the solution? The farmers realized they needed a way to control the river's flow. This necessity for managing water led to innovative irrigation techniques, which ultimately transformed Mesopotamian civilization. And to consider, what was the main challenge faced by farmers in Mesopotamia despite having fertile soil? That's right, they had fertile land, but unpredictable water supply from the rivers made farming extremely difficult. Now, let's take a closer look at how the Mesopotamians engineered their landscape to manage water effectively. First, they built large reservoirs to store water from the rivers, which was crucial for surviving the dry seasons. These reservoirs acted as natural water banks, ensuring a steady supply during times of drought. Next, they created a network of canals and ditches. Think of these as the ancient equivalent of modern irrigation systems. These waterways connected the reservoirs to farms, allowing water to flow efficiently where it was needed most. This setup helped farmers water their crops and support their communities. Then, to prevent the devastating effects of floods, they constructed banks along the Tigris and Euphrates Rivers. These banks served as protective barriers, shielding the fields and settlements from floodwaters that could wipe out crops and homes. Additionally, they implemented drainage systems. These were essential for controlling water levels and preventing waterlogging, which could harm crops and reduce agricultural productivity. Proper drainage ensured the land remained fertile and usable. Now, thinking about these methods, which of the following was not used by the Mesopotamians to control water? Was it digging reservoirs, building dams across the main rivers, constructing banks, or creating a network of ditches? Keep that question in mind as we move forward. Let's talk about the power of plenty and how food surpluses really drove societal change. One of the key factors here was increased productivity, and irrigation played a huge role in that. By controlling water sources, farmers could dramatically boost their crop yields, making their harvests more reliable and efficient. This means they could grow more food and depend on consistent harvests year after year. Now, with this improved productivity, farmers started creating what we call a food surplus, more food than they immediately needed. This surplus was a game changer because it could be stored for later, traded with other communities, or used to feed livestock and support growing populations. Essentially, irrigation didn't just help grow more crops, it helped create a safety net and enabled the development of complex societies. So let me ask you, what exactly is a food surplus, and how did irrigation make it possible? Think about how controlling water allowed farmers to produce consistent, abundant harvests, turning a simple act of farming into a foundation for societal growth. Next, we'll explore how these food surpluses transformed Mesopotamian society and led to new social and economic structures. Now, let's explore how society evolved from simply having a surplus of resources to becoming the complex civilizations we know today. First, the idea of efficiency playing a crucial role. As farming techniques improved, especially with innovations like irrigation, it meant that fewer people needed to work the land. This was a revolutionary change because it freed up many individuals from purely agricultural work. What did that mean? Well, it allowed people to dedicate their time to other activities, things that were impossible when everyone was needed just to produce enough food for survival. This shift was fundamental because it opened the door to new opportunities and roles within society. Next, we see the birth of specialization. With enough food to support the population, society could afford to have people focusing on specific tasks. This led to the rise of craftsmen making tools and goods, scribes recording knowledge, religious figures leading spiritual practices, and government officials organizing and managing society. And the real transformation here is that food surpluses turned Mesopotamia from a collection of farming villages into a complex civilization. They developed organized governments, cultural achievements, and specialized roles, all of which laid the foundation for human civilization as we understand it today. Now, think about this. Why was the development of these specialized occupations impossible before the creation of food surpluses? It's because without enough food to support everyone, there simply wasn't the stability or resources to allow people to focus on anything beyond basic survival. Now let's talk about the division of labor and how it brought about new roles in our complex society. First, the shift. As farming became more efficient, thanks to innovations like irrigation, people were freed from the daily grind of food production. This allowed them to pursue other types of work, which was a big step forward for societal development. Next, let's define what we mean by division of labor. It's when each worker specializes in a specific task or assignment. Instead of everyone doing everything, people focus on what they're best at, which makes the whole society more efficient. So, what are some of the new occupations that emerged? We saw craftsmen creating tools, pottery, and other goods, really essential for daily life. Scribes took on the important job of recording information and keeping records, which helped with administration and communication. Religious figures led spiritual practices, guiding the community's beliefs and ceremonies. And government employees managed administrative tasks, helping society run smoothly. Why was this specialization necessary? Well, for major projects like building structures or digging irrigation systems, it was crucial to have people focusing on specific tasks. This division of labor made large-scale projects possible and more efficient. Now here's a quick practice question for you. Which occupation was not mentioned as emerging from the division of labor? Was it A, craftsmen, B, scribes, C, soldiers, or D, religious figures? Think about the roles we discussed and see if you can identify the odd one out. Let's talk about organizing complexity in Mesopotamian society, focusing on administration and systems. As their cities grew larger and more complex, it became clear that simple village governance wasn't enough anymore. They needed specialized personnel and administrators to manage these big projects and coordinate different aspects of society. This shift was essential because, with the expansion, managing resources, infrastructure, and social order required more structured oversight. Without these skilled leaders, it would have been impossible to handle the scale of irrigation, construction, or resource management that their civilization depended on. That's where systems and laws come into play. The Mesopotamians developed formal frameworks, rules, regulations, and organizational structures that helped keep everything running smoothly. These systems ensured order, promoted cooperation, and allowed them to complete complex projects successfully. Without this foundation of laws and organized administration, monumental tasks like large-scale irrigation or building projects simply couldn't have been accomplished. It was a crucial step in transforming their society into a more organized and efficient civilization. Next, we'll explore how legislation and government frameworks further transformed Mesopotamian society, shaping it into the powerful civilization we study today. Let's take a closer look at the framework of law and governance in ancient Mesopotamia. First, we see that the government included the framework and laws of the land. These laws weren't just random rules. They established clear rules, rights, and responsibilities for everyone in society, creating a structured system of governance that helped manage daily life. Laws served as the foundation of order. They provided the structure and authority needed to organize increasingly complex societies. As communities grew larger and more sophisticated, laws helped coordinate activities across entire populations, making sure everyone knew their role and responsibilities. Now, why were these laws so important? Well, laws ensured that people could work together effectively. Cooperation was essential for building things like irrigation systems, temples, and cities, massive projects that required thousands of workers to coordinate their efforts. Without laws, such large-scale cooperation would have been nearly impossible. Laws didn't just motivate cooperation, they made it possible. They ensured that everyone contributed to the collective good, fostering trust and organization among the people. And this is how law and government transformed Mesopotamia. What started as scattered villages grew into an organized civilization capable of monumental achievements. Laws weren't just rules. They were the glue that held this civilization together, enabling it to flourish and develop. So, reflecting on all this, why do you think laws and government systems were so essential for the development of Mesopotamian civilization? Let's take a closer look at how human settlements evolved from simple villages into bustling metropolises. Between 4000 and 3000 BC, we see a significant increase in the size and complexity of these settlements. Over time, small villages expanded and began to form towns and cities, marking an important milestone in civilization's development. Despite this growth, society in Mesopotamia remained largely agricultural. Many people still worked as farmers or in related agricultural roles, which was the backbone of their economy. The rise of cities didn't mean a departure from farming. Instead, it complemented and supported it. Now, the importance of cities goes beyond just population size. They became critical hubs for various functions. For example, cities served as centers of commerce where people exchanged goods and commodities. They also provided power bases for leaders. Think of kings and officials managing resources and authority. Politically, cities became the focal points for organization and governance. Religious practices were centered there too, with temples and spiritual sites playing major roles in daily life. Culturally, cities fostered artistic expression. Think of sculptures, literature, and architecture that have endured through history. Economically, these urban centers were vital for trade and other activities, connecting different regions and peoples. So, when we consider the overall role of cities in Mesopotamian civilization, it's clear they weren't just places where people lived. They were multifunctional centers shaping political, religious, cultural, and economic life. And to answer our practice question, the primary role of cities was indeed as centers of civilization in political, religious, cultural, and economic terms. They were the backbone of societal development, supporting various critical functions that kept civilization thriving. Let's look at some of the key takeaways from the legacy of the Fertile Crescent. First, geography and rivers played a crucial role. The Tigris and Euphrates Rivers were really the backbone of Mesopotamian civilization. Their annual floods deposited rich silt onto the land, which made the soil incredibly fertile and perfect for farming. Without these natural features, the rise of civilization in this area wouldn't have been possible. Moving on to irrigation innovation, Mesopotamians didn't just rely on the rivers. They developed sophisticated systems to control water. They built reservoirs, canals, and flood protection banks to manage the flow of water, ensuring reliable farming even during dry seasons. This level of engineering was essential for sustaining their crops and supporting a growing population. Because of these innovations, they were able to produce food surpluses. And that's a game changer because it meant not everyone had to be a farmer. With extra food, people could specialize in other skills and occupations, leading to a more complex and diverse society. This division of labor is a hallmark of civilization. Finally, these complex societies needed organization. They developed systems of government and laws to manage large projects like irrigation and city building. Having laws and leadership was vital for maintaining order and ensuring the civilization could thrive over time. All of these points connect to the overall theme: how geography, innovation, and organization shaped the development of one of the world's earliest and most influential civilizations. Let's see how much you've learned about the Fertile Crescent with this fun challenge. First, true or false? Does Mesopotamia mean between the mountains? The answer is false. Mesopotamia actually means between the rivers, referring to the Tigris and Euphrates. This location was crucial for the development of early civilizations. Next, fill in the blank. The annual floods deposited, which made the soil fertile. The answer is silt. This silt is a mixture of fertile soil and tiny rocks, and it played a vital role in supporting agriculture by enriching the land. Now, a multiple-choice question. What major societal change was enabled by food surpluses in Mesopotamia? The correct answer is B, division of labor and specialized occupations. When people had enough food, they could focus on other skills and roles, leading to more complex societies. Here's another true or false. Did the Mesopotamians not need to control the rivers because rainfall was always sufficient? The answer is false. They actually received very little rain, so they had to develop irrigation systems to manage water for farming. So, congratulations. You are now more familiar with the key concepts of the Fertile Crescent and ancient Mesopotamia. Understanding these points helps us see how geography and resource management shaped early civilization development.